Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our last OLLAS Charla of the year. My name is Cristian Doña Robeco, and I am the Director of the Office of Latino and Latin American Studies at UNO. For OLLAS having this charlas, these conversations with experts, it's a very important opportunity and possibility to share with the community and with our students and faculty everything that is being developed in terms of social sciences and humanities across the world, especially in these times that we can actually invite more people to campus through Zoom. This time, I'm going to leave with you Dr. Isabel Belag, Associate Professor in the Exploratory Studies Program and Department of Sociology and Anthropology at UNO, who's going to introduce our presenter today. Isabel?
Thank you very much, Christian. It is our absolute honor and pleasure to welcome Dr. Vicky Colbert today at UNO for the OLLAS Charla. And it's a great representation, selfishly, of my country. I'm very happy to have a Colombian speaker today in Nebraska, in the state of Nebraska. So let me introduce our wonderful speaker today. Just a brief moment of introduction. Dr. Colbert and I met in 2014 when I was still a doctoral student at the University of Miami at the Clinton Foundation Summit for the Americas. And we were both in a panel on education and classrooms for the 21st century. So it's been a while, but it's great to be able to see you again, even though we are so far away, but technology is great. So Vicky Colbert is a laureate of the first edition of the YIDAM Prize for Education Development, which was awarded to her in 2017, and the 2013 Wise Prize for Education Laureate awarded to her by the Qatar Foundation. Vicky Colbert is the founder and director of Fundación Escuela Nueva. Colbert is a sociologist from the Javeriana University in Colombia and pursued her graduate studies in sociology of education at Stanford University in the United States. In 2015, the American University of Nigeria distinguished her with an honoris causa doctorate in philosophy. She's the co-author of the worldwide renowned Escuela Nueva model and was its first national coordinator. Colbert has pioneered, expanded, and sustained this educational innovation from many organizational spheres as Vice Minister of Education of Colombia, UNICEF's Education Advisor for Latin America and the Caribbean, and now from Fundación Escuela Nueva, FEN, an NGO she founded to ensure its quality, sustainability, and innovation. She's been recognized with several awards and distinctions in the fields of leadership and social entrepreneurship, such as the Skoll Award for Social Entrepreneurship, the Clinton Global Citizenship Award, and the Kravis Prize. She has also been recognized as Outstanding Social Entrepreneur by the Schwab Foundation, Ashoka, and the World Technology Network. Without further ado, Vicky, welcome to the University of Nebraska, to OLLAS, and to this charla.
Thank you very much, Isabel. It's a pleasure to be with all of you here from my hometown, Bogota, in Colombia. And I will share with you a presentation of Escuela Nueva. It's quality education for equity. I want to really highlight each word: equity, citizenship, and 21st century skills. First of all, I just want to mention that this is, despite the name, which means new school, it's one of the longest bottom-up innovations of the developing world that's still being sustained. So this is very interesting because it's been sustained for many, many, many years in Colombia. And I also want to highlight that necessity is the mother of innovation. Many of these things were born by necessity. And it's all a little bit the story of Cinderella. We started with the most remote, invisible schools in Colombia, the isolated rural multigrade schools that sometimes not even appear in the statistics. And since nothing really worked very much, we had to rethink everything. And we ended up talking about the school of the future in a way. So this is what is interesting. I think one of the most important things is we managed to transform complexity into simple, manageable action so any teacher could have results. So with this, I start my presentation. I like always to highlight this quote because I think it says very much about what's happening now. For more than 100 years, The lack of school management methods has been the cause of countless complaints, but it has been only in the last 30 years that efforts have been made to find a solution to this problem. And what has resulted? Schools continue exactly the same as before. Who said this? Comenius in the year 1600. So here I want to compare with the health system. If we bring a doctor from 100 years ago into a hospital today, that doctor is totally lost because everything has changed. But if we bring a teacher from 100 years ago into a classroom today, even in an elite school here in Colombia, that teacher is not so lost because everything has changed except the way of learning. So I guess this is my key message. And this is why I say necessity was the mother of innovation. So I want to highlight today the origins, its previous efforts, what is Escuela Nueva and some of its most important evaluations, and some of our work. Because Escuela Nueva, we started in government, it became a national policy reaching many schools in Colombia to universalize basic primary education. But then after I left the ministry, I created an NGO, Fundación Escuela Nueva. It's an NGO. Because we wanted to continue innovating and we wanted to continue, let's say, being vigilants of the quality of the implementation of the model in Colombia and abroad, and also to make new adaptations like adapted to urban areas and also to displaced migrant populations. So Latin America, usually in Latin America, we still have very traditional frontal teacher-centered methods, a lot of emphasis still on memorization, not comprehension. We have incomplete schooling, especially in secondary education, because we have high repetition and dropout rates, rigid calendars that do not adapt to the children's conditions, low academic achievements, low self-esteem of children, I want to highlight this, and weak school community relationships. So these are general overall issues of Latin American education. And they're in all countries, overloaded, irrelevant curriculums, insufficient time for effective learning, too much time is lost in administrative things. When we compare, let's say, 3 hours a day, 100-day school years compared to 6 hours a day, 220 days in Europe, it's exactly the half. A lot of untrained teachers in handling the word multi-grade schools, and low teacher morale because there's inadequate pre-in-service training of the teachers to handle these schools. Limited amount of time in the first grade to really learning basic skills, and lack of appropriate materials. So let's say education in Latin America has progressed in access and in coverage, but still we have high repetition and dropout rates. The issue is quality. We still can say, and unfortunately it's a sad indicator, we still can say that almost 50% of students in 4th grade do not understand what they read. So this is crucial. I wanted to, since we were born in multi-grade schools, we did not end up totally there. We went beyond, but we started in multi-grade schools. And I want to highlight this study of the University of London of Angela Little. She used to be the former director of the Institute of Education, where she mentioned that the current shortfalls at that moment in the achievement of the education for all goals are founded among communities who live at the margin of society and who participate in the margins of the formal education system. At many of these margins, multi-grade teaching is involved. They're invisible schools. So as Angela says, these schools, multi-grade teachers and children who learn operate at the margins sometimes of national systems of education and are largely invisible to those who plan, manage, and fund education systems. So multi-grade teaching arises through necessity. Sometimes people think it's often considered a second-class education. However, in some cases, necessity has been transformed into a positive pedagogy. And this is a well-known education, Escuela Nueva system, notably for its proactive strategy. So what do we say in Latin America? We say that improving the quality of education requires a paradigm shift. More than an emphasis on expanding current systems of education. More of the same is not enough. So we say we need a cultural change, a shift of emphasis from transmission of information to an emphasis in comprehension and collective construction of knowledge, a new approach to learning, renovated teaching methods, and a new role of the teacher. So this is not new in the philosophy of education, but it's new putting it in practice. So Escuela Nueva from the outset had a systemic perspective. If we wanted a child that is improving his academic skills, his self-esteem, his social skills and democratic behavior, we also need a change in the way of working with the teachers, improved teaching practices, positive attitude, peer support, leadership opportunities among themselves. We have learned that teachers learn so much more from other teachers. Families, communities, active involvement and participation in child's education. And of course, education administrators that have a more role of supporting teachers, supporting relationship instead of just, a controller and rigid type of relationship. So it has a systemic perspective. The children are in the center. Escuela Nueva has 4 major components: curriculum, teacher training, school and community, and administrative. And we wanted to impact national curriculum policies, national training policies, national textbook policies. We really wanted that children in the remote areas could really have concrete materials and quality education. So we had to rethink the classroom, the learning process, the teacher's role, teacher training, and the participation of parents. And all this, by the way, with the COVID situation, we can talk about it afterwards. So Escuela Nueva transforms the conventional school and way of learning from frontal teacher-centered into really child-centered, active, participatory, cooperative learning. Cooperative learning is something that Fundación Escuela Nueva has been strengthening in the last years. So it started as a local innovation. It gradually became a national policy in Colombia. At the end of the 80s, it reached most of around 20,000 schools. It's basic education. It goes up to 9th grade. We started first with the 5 grades of education that are in Colombia. In Latin America, there are, I think, 6 grades in some countries. But we wanted to address all these factors simultaneously, rather than tackling each one in isolation. So we wanted to integrate curriculum, in-service training and follow-up, community and administrative strategies in a systemic and cost-effective way to guarantee access, quality, and relevance of basic education. We know without quality basic education, nothing can be achieved in a country. So what is Escuela Nueva? What does Escuela Nueva promote? Child-centered, active, participatory, and cooperative learning. As I said, nothing new in the philosophy of education, but the new thing was to bring these types of perspectives of education to the most vulnerable children of Colombia. Different learning paces and flexible promotion, flexibility. Anybody can learn if we give them the time. So we have to manage different learning rhythms. And of course, in a multi-grade setting, necessarily a teacher has to handle several grades at the same time in one same classroom. Multi-grade, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, and now preschool, because by decree, most Latin American countries, they make changes by decree, and that necessarily doesn't sometimes come into operation. But here the issue is different learning rhythms, and we introduce the concept of flexibility, that the school adapts to the learning rhythms of the children. A new role of the teacher as a mentor. And at this moment with the COVID situation, she really becomes a mentor, she or he, a guide, a facilitator that spends more time knowing how her children are learning than just transmitting facts or information. How do we bring the parents into the learning process? How do we bring them to participate and to understand what's going on in the school so that they can support their children? We had to change the way of working with the teachers, that the teachers experience the same methodology that they will be using with their children, because usually teachers are never trained in active systems themselves. How do we teach democracy and participatory values and active citizenship precisely, I have this Thursday with the University of Ottawa in Canada. I have a discussion on democracy and education. I will be participating on that. By the way, Colombia was the first democracy in Latin America. I think it's important that you know this. So it has been important. And we wanted a new generation of dialoguing, self-paced, self-directed, reusable, because we have to think of cost effectiveness in developing countries, learning guides that incorporate both content and methodology. This is important because now, because of the COVID situation, the learning guides have been crucial because they do not only have content, but they have the pedagogy, the methodology, the orientations. It's like a hybrid. These learning guides are like a hybrid between a textbook, a workbook, and the guide of the teacher, all in one, because we had to think of cost effectiveness. So a flexible and personalized methodology that promotes both independent learning and cooperative work. How can we have this? So we have children working in pairs, promoting dialogue, individual work, Pacific West Coast of Colombia, collaborative and group work, promoting dialogue and interaction. Children are looking into their eyes, discussing, dialoguing among themselves, reaching conclusions among themselves. Relevant, meaningful curriculums based on children's daily life, what Maria Montessori did with the elite schools in Italy. Well, we wanted children in rural schools of Colombia to learn to play, to learn in a different way, and having concrete objects from their low-cost materials from their community. Learning corners that improve learning environments. Learning corners that, you know, where children participate and go look for materials in their library to get out little books. So all these children have little small libraries in their multi-grade classroom. Instruments like community maps, where teachers know where the children live, who has to walk the farthest away, where are the families, who are the families. So you can imagine now with the COVID situation, how useful these instruments have been, because the teacher knows where the community is, especially teachers that are, you know, changed so often, because this is one of the big issues in Latin America. Teachers are permanently changing because they're always looking to come closer to the municipalities and cities so that they can continue studying. This is one of the aspects that forces a lot of teachers were asking to be trasladados, to be moved closer to the cities. But then we can say Escuela Nueva, throughout these interventions, generates a new culture of peace and citizenship, allowing boys and girls to learn, participate, empowering them in their communities. So we say, okay, this is not new in the philosophy of education, but this is the essence of what we try to achieve in Escuela Nueva. But let's see some of the results in coverage, in quality, and inequality, in academic achievements, in social skills, and pluralism. So there have been decades of research behind Escuela Nueva. Many studies have been conducted by UNESCO, by the University of London, by Stanford University, where I had the opportunity to study, the World Bank, Instituto Ser de Investigaciones, the Colombian Institute that no longer exists, but it existed at this moment, called Ciencias, the Institute of Colombia for Colombian Science, and National Planning Department of Colombia, which has been crucial for maintaining long-term policies in Colombia. So this was the first study that UNESCO did in Latin America. This was in the year 2000. And Colombia was about the middle, like average. But after Escuela Nueva was implemented, immediately rural education in Colombia had better quality than urban education, except in mega ciudades, except in the big cities. This was not sustained. This was the results, and we received the calls from UNESCO congratulating us, saying, in these schools, we have seen that you outbeat urban children. So, this is very crucial in education. So we wanted to continue pushing Escuela Nueva. Escuela Nueva had already become a national policy, had been implemented in 20,000 schools when this study took place. However, it started also with a big decentralization process in Latin America and in Colombia. So I'll tell you later what happened. So we also wanted to strengthen cooperative learning through positive changes in democratic behavior. We wanted that skills, values, and attitudes of empathy and peaceful social interaction can be nurtured at school. So this was a study that was done in Guatemala because we have sent Colombian teachers abroad in many countries of Latin America, in Brazil, even Vietnam. I'll talk about Vietnam later on. So this was a study that Academy for Education of Education did, USAID, financed by USAID, and how children in Guatemala and indigenous communities learn to take turns, to lead processes, to give opportune feedback, positive feedback versus negative feedback. They learn to take turns, they learn to lead processes. So the way we learn influences the development of our social interactions. And the students in Escuela Nueva gain awareness and understanding of the power of situation groups to influence individual behavior. They develop skills to step up and act and become mindful change agents, and they learn and practice the ability to overcome challenging situations, social, emotional, academic. Girls' participation. This is crucial because we have seen how in primary education, girls start their leadership skills, start, really moving forward. We will be doing Isabel and Christian and all, and Yuriko, we will be doing some research on girls' participation in the future because we just received a grant to continue analyzing girls' situations in Escuela Nueva. So what we have seen is that cooperative learning, and I had a wonderful professor at Stanford, Elizabeth Cohen. She was the professor of cooperative learning. We don't use it as much as we should in Latin America, which is central to Escuela Nueva, eliminates prejudices, stereotypes, gender biases, and these are the things we are looking for. And it also provides opportunities to participate more, excel, be more outgoing, take initiative, and lead groups. I have seen this, and this is why we want to do a little bit more research on what's happening with girls. In secondary education, boys start becoming more leaders, but in primary education, girls' initiatives are amazing, and their self-esteem is really enhanced. So some important conclusions. One of the 3 most outstanding reforms in developing countries worldwide by the United Nations Human Development Report in the year 2000, when we received this news from UNESCO. It was one of the country's 3 major achievements. And I think this is the most important of all. This was a study done by National Department of Colombia, demonstrating how Escuela Nueva compensates for socioeconomic limitations when comparing children of Escuela Nueva of socioeconomic level 1 with socioeconomic level 2. It means that it really compensates for inequity. So we take these children of Escuela Nueva, which are in the lowest rank of socioeconomic level, the poorest of the poor, and we compare them with other schools, conventional schools of higher level socioeconomic level, and Escuela Nueva has better results. So this is why I wanted to highlight the word, not only quality, but equity. Studies that USAID has done, because USAID has been very supportive of Escuela Nueva. So usually in this study done in Guatemala, girls outperform their male classmates in the indigenous areas of Guatemala, where female access is historically low. This was a study done precisely in 2014 on education, the policy and student achievement in Colombia, demonstrating results. The results of the University of London showing that there are significant results in the formation of democratic behavior and peaceful social interaction of children in comparison to conventional schools. The probability of parents perceiving an impact of the school on home practices grows as the level of implementation of Escuela Nueva increases. The better you do it, the more results the parents have, and they see the results in their families. And of course, we have seen also, we did some adaptation of Escuela Nueva to Zambia, and we partnered with Campit, an organization, a British organization. Unfortunately, children, even though it was an English-speaking country, children do not speak English. They speak their local languages, so we only adapted part of Escuela Nueva, not the whole. So we had our challenges and lessons learned in the implementation of Escuela Nueva in Colombia. We learned things, teachers were transferred, new teachers came with a whole decentralization process, and this was all Latin America. So most education reforms in Latin America were more administrative in nature than pedagogical. So things started falling down. But we learned that any implementation process must be gradual, well monitored. We had a bottom-up approach. We started bottom-up. We took the school as the unit of change. Everybody focuses on the administrative stuff at higher levels. We have had permanent, constant evaluation and recognition, nationally and internationally. And the children, teachers, and community were the actors of change. I think this was the most important part. We learned that civil society plays a crucial role, ensuring quality and sustainability. This is why we had to create Fundación Escuela Nueva. We have learned that public-private partnerships are crucial. We have had good relationship with the Coffee Growers Federation and the largest petroleum company of Colombia. There's a permanent demand for Escuela Nueva. The systemic approach has permitted that at least some of the components operate while others are not so strong. But the most important of all is that the team with whom I started, Escuela Nueva, in Colombia, they're all part of the Fundación Escuela Nueva. So we have a passion, commitment of the original team. So our work, Fundación Escuela Nueva, volvamos a la gente, return to the people. It's a non-governmental organization. We founded in 1987, precisely when the country was ready to start thinking about decentralization. And we said, oh my God, everything is going to be learning how to decentralize. So we have to make sure that Escuela Nueva doesn't lose its essence. So we created Fundación Escuela Nueva with several ex-ministers of education. We wanted to adapt it to new context, to populations and countries, and we have led its implementation internationally. And we're based on the Escuela Nueva. We provide educational solutions. So we help other organizations. We work with other institutions. And of course, we provide educational solutions to improve quality, efficiency, and sustainability of education, when we also ensure the quality and integrity of Escuela Nueva's implementation through a lot of monitoring and evaluation strategies and indicators. And we do a lot of investment in research and development, because we want to adapt Escuela Nueva to new populations and countries, like we have done with the migrant population from Venezuela at the moment. So we have done adaptations to urban areas. We call it Escuela Activa Urbana. We call Círculos de Aprendizaje, Escuela Nueva Learning Circles. This is for migrant population and displaced populations in Colombia. And we're working in 6 cities of Colombia, in La Guajira, in Barranquilla, especially in Arauca, close to the frontiers with Venezuela. We have done much more research on cooperative learning, on peace education, and indigenous ancestral knowledge of Colombia. Colombia has had a diversity of indigenous populations, but they're a very small minority. But we have done some interesting work with all this ancestral indigenous knowledge, and we're now working a lot on the ecological dimension of ancestral indigenous knowledge. Entrepreneurship and financial education, 21st century skills, and we strengthen our Renueva, is our online campus and community of practice for teachers. Here's where we really have had to put a lot of energy right now with the COVID situation. So we adapted it to Escuela. So let me mention Escuela Activa Urbana. We say, why don't we do it also in urban areas? We named it Escuela Activa Urbana. But I just want to highlight that even though we have examples, excellent examples of urban Escuela Nueva, of course, the necessity forces us to think more about the rural areas. Because as you know, in rural areas, in all Latin America, there's no connectivity. So Escuela Activa Urbana, we adapted it here in Bogota. We did results. National University evaluated, and there was an increase in language skills and math. Amazing. And this was led by National University. Now we adapted Escuela Nueva to displaced migrant populations. We say usually children come and displaced and migrant children come, and if they go to a big school, 1 week or 2 weeks after they leave. So they need more attention. They need more love. They need to, much more accompanying them. So we had adapted Escuela Nueva learning circles. They operate in the communities after children, usually schools registers all the children. Some are left out. So we look for these children, out of school children. We organize the learning circles in community spaces. And that learning circle is linked to a bigger school. So it's part of that big school, but they just receive much more personalized attention. So the learning students scored, when we adapted this and we did this, it was amazing how children in these learning circles were beyond national average in language and math. And their self-esteem was improved. We've been measuring self-esteem from the outset, because we know that if a child improves his self-esteem or her self-esteem, they flourish. If they do not improve their self-esteem, it's not going to be the same. So we've been measuring self-esteem. La Universidad Católica de Chile, Christian, lent me the instruments and we adapted them to Colombia to measure self-esteem. But here's where, with universities, we need a lot of more instruments to measure all these social emotional issues, especially now after the COVID situation. So because of the mandatory quarantine and the particular situation of girls and boys enrolled in the learning circles, which started in late March, we adapted some tools to continue the learning process at home. Escuela Nueva en Casa. So we have the tutors and the advisors guiding the children. They give feedback and evaluate the progress of each student through cell phone calls, through WhatsApp groups, through video, audio, and text messages, because in many of these also vulnerable communities, there's no connectivity. So we have maintained that the interaction between tutors, parents, and children is constant, and that the bond and their ties are strengthened. Cooperative learning for us is the essence of Escuela Nueva Activa that we try to put in practice by Fundación Escuela Nueva. Peace, peaceful social interaction, it isn't taught, it's learned together. And here's where we really want to learn how to measure more all these social emotional skills. Learning materials for entrepreneurship and culture of conservation in formal and non-formal contexts. Here's where we used the methodology of Escuela Nueva to really get into our indigenous ancestral knowledge. And of course, an emphasis on environmental issues. And we have strengthened our virtual campus, Renueva. Aware of the new reality, we adapted our virtual campus, launching a series of tools that facilitate and strengthen the process of learning at home with the Escuela Nueva Activa model. So we have some tutorial videos, a space to get familiarized and to revisit some elements of Escuela Nueva methodology, work plans to adapt the Escuela Nueva process to home, and a pack of support material to study at home. So this is what we've been trying to do with Renueva, our virtual campus. So I saw this in a newspaper in Colombia many years back. We need individuals who can work in teams. If you have the ability to solve problems, follow instructions, lead processes, meet deadlines, but most important, working groups, you have a greater chance of finding a job. And this was in the year 2003 in the newspaper of Colombia. But education systems are not training these individuals properly. And the ability to solve problems, make decisions, live together peacefully, and learn to learn are the essential pattern of measurement to evaluate the efficacy of these educational methodologies and performance. So what are the 21st century skills? Learning to learn. What a robot cannot do, because now robots can do almost everything. Learning to learn, learning to criticize and accept criticism, learning to follow instructions and meet deadlines, critical thinking, learning to take on complex problems, learning to lead process and take initiatives, to take risks, to communicate ideas using ICTs, learning how to synthesize information, to test knowledge, but especially the ability to work in teams. And these are the crucial issues of the 21st century skills and the essence of Escuela Nueva. So these are the explicit developments of 21st century skills, the leadership and entrepreneurial skills in the way of thinking, learning to learn, learning to know, critical thinking, creativity, creative problem solving, nothing new, decision making, learning to synthesize information, learning to be, learning to live together, the whole concept of local and global citizenship, learning to lead processes, to positively criticize and accept criticism, test knowledge, take risks. In the ways of working, learning to do collaboration, working in teams, and of course the ICT literacy that we're all needing. So Escuela Nueva has inspired many educational reforms worldwide. It has reached, not directly, we have worked through governments, and it has reached like 7 million children. But I want to highlight how important Vietnam has been, because Vietnam incorporated Escuela Nueva for all the rural schools, and we gave them technical assistance. Fundacion, our NGO, gave them technical assistance. I sent Colombian teachers to Vietnam, and the recent evaluation of the World Bank came out, and it was fantastic results. So I feel a little bit of jealousy with the Vietnamese. I think they're doing even it better than us here in Colombia. So there are many countries that have been inspired in Escuela Nueva. We were going to start last year with Pakistan, but of course, because we usually have study missions, and the year in 2019 we had a visit from People's Republic of China. So they were visiting Escuela Nueva here in Colombia. So we've had at least like 42 countries, that want to learn about Escuela Nueva. So we contribute to improve the quality, relevance, and efficiency of education by rethinking the way we learn. That's what we try to do, and promoting active, cooperative, and personalized learning. Personalized and cooperative learning are essential for the 21st century skills. They are the essence. And here I like to quote my friend, Francois Tadei. He's the head of the Interdisciplinary Research Center in Paris at Descartes University. And he's a biologist and a physicist. And he fell in love with Escuela Nueva. And, we've been doing so many things together for so many years, because he wants to change the French educational system, which for him is very traditional. So we've been trying to have some joint efforts. And, but I just want to highlight that his research has been very important, his research, especially on animals in relation to none of us alone is as smart as all of us together. And we have had many publications, many publications internationally. You can see there are many more. Effective Schools in Developing Countries, it's an old one, Aprendizaje Bajo la Lupa. This was recently published by UNICEF. This, In Search of the School of the 21st Century, this is our oldest publication that we've had, published by UNESCO and UNICEF, and it was a Chilean ex-minister of education who wrote it, Ernesto Schiefelbein. And in this very simple analysis, he makes such a simple, practical way of approaching Escuela Nueva that I still think it's one of the best articles that has been written. Future directions of an educational change, beyond and better, how we approach systemically essentials of strategic leadership. I will be with Kim next week at Stanford University with her students, sharing all these things. Kim Starkey-Junker, and in adolescence, like University of Pennsylvania has published a lot of things on Escuela Nueva. And now in España, Viaje a la Escuela del Siglo XXI. Well, this is why I say that it's the story of Cinderella. And of course, Fundación para el Desarrollo, FES, Equidad has published also. And there have been many articles published at the New York Times, at Washington Post. I can send you after our presentation some recent articles that came out in the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal just recently, so I can share those. Okay. So as a conclusion, so we can leave some time for discussion and questions. I didn't want to take more time. Yes, it's possible to improve the quality of education and learning in the most vulnerable environments. But more of the same is not enough. We require a paradigm shift from teacher-centered to really child-centered. A systemic approach has to be done from the initially, and learning has to go beyond academics. So here we're fostering social emotional competencies, 21st century skills, peaceful democratic behaviors, and we have to learn to measure all this. This is where great to partner with universities. Technology triggers change, but a new pedagogy is indispensable for effective learning. I used to quote my friend from Uruguay, just incorporating computers in the classroom without changing your pedagogy perpetuates at a higher cost than traditional technique. You need a new type of pedagogy if you want new technologies to really work well. And we have learned, last but not least, you have to work with governments for impact and for coverage, and that's their responsibility, health and education. But you need to have public-private partnerships and the role of civil society for two key words, quality and sustainability. If we had not created Fundación Escuela Nueva, everybody would have said, oh, such a nice program, but that was finished. That, you know, it was over. There was no more money, whatever, but we've continued to maintain it alive. And I think this is what's most important. So I really have learned that you need governments for impact and coverage, but you need quality and sustainability, you need the role of civil society. And I want to highlight the importance of the Jomtien conference, the most important world conference that happened, I think it was it was like 30 years ago, in Jomtien, Thailand. You know, it was one of the declarations was education is so important, you cannot leave it only in the hands of governments. So this is it. And here is our campus and our information on Escuela Nueva and our organization. And I'm ready for questions. Thank you very much for all of you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Vicky, for such a wholesome, comprehensive, and thorough presentation of your activities. It is really very impressive, everything you've been able to achieve in the last, how many, 40 years?
40 years.
How many 40 years, but still it is very, very impressive. And you covered a lot. And so if you have questions, please write them in the chat and we'll take them as we go. I want to start by asking you a specific, well, I have several questions. I have many questions. I have a very specific Colombian question, and then more global and relevant to the United States questions. The first question I want to ask you, Vicky, is you talked about peace. It's very important, right? Peace building skills within the curriculum. I want to ask you, what was the impact and the challenges that you've had with Escuela Nueva in challenging departments of Colombia, like Arauca, Cauca, Chocó, Nariño, Norte, Santander, that have a heavy armed conflict presence? And has there been any research on the silent revolution that education is, right? So the likelihood of a kid who joins Escuela Nueva to stay in education and not join the armed conflict. That's my first question to you.
Yes, well, this is one of the reasons we have worked in all these areas that you mentioned that are very difficult areas. Yes, Escuela Nueva has reached all these schools. Now, this is why it's so urgent to have it for for complete 9th grade. If we had it up to the 9th grade, I am sure that many children would not be tempted to go to the guerrillas. So this is so important at the moment. Now, there are other organizations that are very successful, especially for 10th and 11th graders. SAT, Sistema Aprendizaje Tutorial. I can send you the information. This was born in El Valle. And especially, you know, they have amazing work for productive projects, agricultural productive projects for students in 10th and 11th grade. And we need Escuela Nueva up to the 9th grade. So this is what we're trying to push and move forward the more we can, because the more we do this, the less children can be recruited from illegal groups, for sure. Of course, of course. And especially because they're learning to dialogue in their school. Of course, before the pandemic, before the COVID situation. But the children are dialoguing all the time. And this is why, you know, they don't use they can criticize, they can dialogue, and there's a real big cultural change. You see this in the children. So this is where we need to do much, much more. So it's a long story. It's been for many years, but it still has a long way to go. We need to strengthen it more at the secondary education level.
Thank you, Vicky. And so my second question to you is, you know, a lot of these ideas are fascinating and they're not just applicable for children in elementary schools or middle schools. A lot of these ideas are things that we could all benefit from at the university level with our students. And I'm thinking especially at the University of Nebraska, where we have a lot of students coming from rural areas and who are first generation students, whose parents didn't go to university, who don't necessarily have the support systems academically besides the university to succeed in school. And so our role is instrumental. What are some methodologies or some techniques that you think are transferable from Escuela Nueva to a public rural metropolitan university like ours?
Just as we use the methodology of Escuela Nueva to train women in El Salvador to handle their finances, you say, what do you mean? Just like we use the methodology of Escuela Nueva to work with the music teachers of the Filarmónica de Bogotá. People can ask me, what do you mean? Yes, we have done it. We have done it because the essence of cooperative learning and the learning guides, to learn to produce the learning guides, as I mentioned, is like a hybrid between a textbook and a workbook. Well, these are very important because they handle the important questions that you want students to focus on. So you can do this, so you can use this participatory methodology with the learning guides. At universities also, of course. And precisely at this moment, I am having on Fridays seminars with La Universidad del Valle and with the Faculty of Philosophy, which are so philosophical, in contrast of what I'm saying, very epistemological, as in Latin America we like to be, but I want them to be more practical. So we're going to be using learning guides for them to make their learning guides for their students. And even the National University was also interested for their medical students, because to change the way of learning totally. So I think it perfectly can be done using elements of Escuela Nueva, especially the learning guides can be very useful and can inspire teachers to really pose the right intelligent questions and have their students, dialogue and participate and cooperate. Of course, yes, you can. The methodology, I'm not saying the whole model, I'm saying the methodology.
Certainly, and this is something that, we'll be thinking about for our own classes. I have a question here from Gabriela Isurieta from the Ministerio de Educación de Ecuador. How hard has it been to implement this model in areas of difficult access? In Ecuador, there's a lack of prepared teachers and no one wants to go to those areas. Is there any way in which you involved your community for this?
Totally, yes. Yes, because precisely these teachers, when they son trasladados, when they come to a small community, rural isolated community, oh my God, I just want to start running, They don't know anything. They don't know anything about the community. So this is why Escuela Nueva and the training for the teachers gives some very simple instruments. So the teachers can know about the community, who's who in the community, where are the families. So we give them, I think the strength of Escuela Nueva has been that we have concrete operational strategies. So for each thing you have an instrument. And yes, for sure, all these instruments and the learning guides. And then when we had teachers together, for example, the way we train the teachers, we train teachers that they use we train them with the same methodology they will be using with their students. So if that teacher did receive a workshop on Escuela Nueva, they immediately know how to start moving in their community, how through the children and the school governments they could get information from the families, and how the school can become the center of the community. So for sure, there are very concrete steps. We even have the algorithms of Escuela Nueva. No? So I think this has helped a lot. And the teachers, and one of the things we do with the teachers is they're trained with the same methodology, but we don't leave them alone. We create the micro centers. The micro centers are those spaces where teachers get together and reflect on what they're learning. Let's say teachers from close by communities would get together once a month. Now with the COVID situation, we're doing it through Renueva. But the teachers, one of the things that has been fascinating is Andy Hargreaves from the University of Boston, now from the University of Ottawa, and with whom I'm going to be participating the day after tomorrow. Precisely, he has worked a lot on collaborative professionalism. Why it's so important for teachers to have their microcenters as in Escuela Nueva. So that because teachers learn more from other teachers than from experts sometimes. So yes, definitely los microcentros, the microcenters are essential to Escuela Nueva. And I think these are things that could be perfectly used in a university. There are many
Thank you.
things, learning guides, microcenters, many things.
Another question here from Jexalén Jaramillo, who's one of my students. What was the most challenging moment you had in your career?
It's always been so challenging. Everything has been very, very challenging. There have been many, many, many moments, difficult moments. Usually turnovers of bureaucrats in the ministries of education. They want to start everything from scratch. So we lack in Latin America scientific accumulated knowledge. Why, if we have scientific accumulated research knowledge, why don't we use it? So I think to the question, going back to the question, it has not been one, it has been many times, many difficult moments. I would have to think on it. I would have to think on it. I guess I was Vice Minister of Education, and we were having the universalization plan in Colombia to really, for the first time, offer complete basic primary education. We had the learning materials ready to go out to all the rural isolated schools of Colombia. And we were, at this moment, we were keeping all these materials in a big deposito. And there was such a tremendous winter of rain that everything fell down. Los techos se cayeron, the roofs came down, and all the things we were having ready to distribute, were totally destroyed. So things like this, when you're ready to move forward and all these accidents and simple things happen, but they can really ruin many, many things. But I guess I have more positive challenges than negative reactions. But we have had, of course, problems, definitely. And of course, there have been incidents. No, I mean, I don't want to mention that so much, but in these areas, where the guerrilla has been living and participating for so many years, we were a little bit afraid because children sometimes they write so much information in their notebooks, and what they're going through. My brother left and didn't come back, or things. So we were a little bit scared that many of these instruments teachers would not use them because they would feel scared if they would use them because of these other illegal groups.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the panelists? Cristian, Yuriko?
Thank you very much, Vicky, for this really interesting presentation. And I wanted to know how do you think this model can be applied to a global North country like the U.S. That sees itself as not having these issues? Well, we know it has, and there's multiple issues with rural areas in the United States and Australia and Canada and other parts. But how do you think you can apply this model, or how this model can be applied to a country like the United States?
Well, actually, Christian, Claremont University, there's a professor there, Tom Dushai, who wrote an article in California on lessons from Colombia Escuela Nueva for California. I'll send you that. He really wants that we get a project started in California or in the US. So this is something we want to move forward with, either with the university, with Claremont Graduate University, or with any other university. but there have been already many questions in relation to this. And we say, but it's just good pedagogy. It's nothing new. It's just that we learned it the hard way because we have many more difficulties in Latin America. But of course, it would be used perfectly well. And I even went to see a school, Christian, in California, an elite school. And it was multigrade by choice. It was so I want to go beyond the multigrade because we can use it also in escuelas graduadas, in not only multigrade schools. But I went to visit it and it was amazing. It was really amazing. They were putting in practice all the idea of Carol Dweck, because as you know, Carol Dweck and myself, we received the Yeadon Prize, and she in the area of research and me in the area of development. And we were very close with Carol. And precisely what was interesting about this school was, you know, they were putting in practice all the things that that Carol recommends for growth mindset. And here we wanted also to show how in Escuela Nueva we have many elements of growth mindset that are crucial, and we do the same. So when I saw this school, a private elite school, so similar to the rural multigrade impoverished schools we have, I said, well, why not? Why not? Of course we can do it. Why not from south to north? Why does it always have to be north to south? And I think it perfectly can. Yes, it would be great. And if we could have the, let's say, this is why I was so interested also in receiving your invitation, because just as Claremont Graduate University is so interested, and you know, several universities have been writing, and of course Stanford is also interested, you know, because they say, why don't we do something like this in the United States? Well, why not? But here is where we need a pilot project, and great if this could be done jointly with the university. This would be fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, I was thinking that there are many rural areas in Nebraska where we have a first generation students, Latino students are coming and they're transforming these communities with their families, and they're sort of at a mixed place with the background that we have in many Latin American countries, especially in rural areas, but with some of the benefits of larger, more well-funded or better funded school districts. So having this in those kind of schools where parents work 2-3 jobs might also be an interesting place to apply.
Yes, definitely. And there's also, it's a friend of mine in New Orleans. He says, I want to bring this to New Orleans, to our not only urban schools, but rural schools. So let's say there have been manifestations of many interests, and I'll share with you this article of Professor Tom Lushai. But we can continue our conversation around it. Why not? Yes, of course. Because, you know, the only thing we did was modularize the curriculum, modularize it. And that introduces flexibility, which is one of the elements we know that is crucial for learning.
Thank you, Vicky. Isabel or Yuri?
Yes, Vicky, thank you so much again for this great conversation. And I have a question. So have you seen like how this program could be implemented in other cities in Colombia? Did you mention around 6, but do you think there's a possibility to?
Yes. Yes, definitely. We started we have done this in Manizales, and they have successful urban schools. We have done it in Tunja, Boyacá. Yes, that's a very successful school. We have done it in Bogotá, of course. But what we have to look is the right partners always to have the right partners, because, you know, education results take time and it requires patience. So everything has to be first a pilot project. So what we did in Bogotá and with the evaluation of National University was very significant. But definitely, of course, we could do it in other cities. Yes, it's just that the rural demands so much more precisely now because of the lack of connectivity. So it has, and you know, the interesting thing about the COVID situation is that what we've been pursuing for so many years, the COVID situation forced us to really be child-centered. A la fuerza, it became student-centered. A la fuerza, the role of the teacher changed. Now it's a much more profound mentor human dimension. And also the parents a la fuerza were participating. And in Escuela Nueva, in our learning guides, there's always an activity at the end, which is to do something concrete with a family in their home. So, so Escuela Nueva was already doing these things, but because of the COVID situation, they became stronger. So this is why I try to look at things in a very positive way. So it was an opportunity to reimagine.
Thank you very much, Vicky, for this wonderful Q&A session and for this talk. I think this concludes our session and our charla for today. Once again, we've learned a lot, and we hope to apply some of these ideas and methodologies to our teaching and perhaps to our state. So we'll be hopefully continuing these conversations online soon.
Yes, wonderful to continue having this conversation con mis amigas colombianas y chilenos. Maravilloso, maravilloso. Okay, thank you so very much. Thank you. We'll continue to be,
Thank you.
we'll continue to be in charge in communication. Thank you.
Bye.
On behalf of OES, Vicky, many, many thanks for this wonderful presentation of these wonderful ideas.
Thank you so much. Thank you.